of young people, we remove the scales from their eyes so that they are capable of seeing things as they ought to be seen.
Do you think democracy works for Africa? And I'm asking this question because some of individuals like Thomas Sankara and Patrice Lumumba and Kwame Nkrumah, like individuals who wanted good things for their people and their nations, they ended up being removed from the positions of power. And most of the times, it's usually the West who are doing that. And we can all agree that conflict is a huge industry, especially for Western countries, right? When it comes to Africa and taking resources from the continent. Should Africa have a different governing system?
First of all, let us understand the state and status of the post-colonial African state. These are neo-colonial states which were created with the intention that they should not function. I urge you and your audience to read a book written by Adekeye Adebajo, The Curse of Berlin, Africa After the Cold War. The Berlin Project was one of the most diabolical projects ever undertaken against any people, dividing us into little countries, and how some given to France, who now call themselves Francophone, some given to the Portuguese, now call themselves Lusophone, some given to the British, calling themselves Anglophone, and complete with organizations which have been created deliberately to ensure that those divisions are alive and well. So it is true that governance system is manipulated. People like Kwame Nkrumah were overthrown through the machinations of the United States of America and the United Kingdom. Patrice Emery Lumumba was also assassinated and removed from power through the machinations of the Americans and the Belgians. And we know many of them have been the victims of this kind of manipulation. Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara was removed through Blaise Compaoré, through the activities of France. We know all these. And they do that because they want to have their puppets in place. And that is the reason why some of us believe that a Pan-African and a united Africa will make sure that we are not susceptible to the activities of these diabolical imperialists. So, which brings me to the question that you've asked, democracy. What is democracy? I mean, the thing that we call democracy has been exported to us and embraced to us means that we have multi-party elections, that we have periodic elections. I no longer use the word democracy, I use the word governance. And I have no doubt in my mind that Africa needs to rethink governance. Governance that will ensure that the people are involved in electing the people who serve them, a governance that will ensure that we have structures of accountability for those who have the honor and privilege of serving their people. If we do that and use whatever term that we want, not necessarily democracy, will create systems that are sustainable. You will have noted in many African countries, immediately after the elections, then there is conflict. Because we have created a system where those who win the elections or those who lose the elections can't agree. Those who lose the elections will always claim that the elections were rigged or stolen. So this idea of creating a political system which is conflictual is not in the best interest of Africa. Africa must rethink, and there must not be any one size fits all. What will be suitable in Nigeria may not necessarily be suitable in Ghana. It may have its own nuances, but there is one golden thread that must pass through it, that the people must be involved in determining who are going to serve them. Once we do that, then we will have an Africa where there is sustainable and sustained leadership that will ensure that the continent grows politically, economically, and otherwise.
How can we achieve Pan-Africanism in our current age?
No, we are going to achieve it. You know, sometimes I think we judge ourselves too harshly. The post-colonial African state is just slightly, the oldest, which is Ghana, is just slightly over how many years? 60 years.
60 years.
Yeah, so that is very young. So the struggle must continue. And now I am beginning to see, as I travel across the continent, the anger and the urge to eliminate the things that divide us. Eliminate visas. You don't need them. Eliminate boundaries. Ensure that trade flows, that I'm able to take a bus from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to Dhaka in Senegal, from Cape Town in South Africa to Cairo in Egypt. Once you allow people to move freely, once you allow goods to move freely, once you allow the airspace to be open, and you will be surprised. Under the aegis of the OAU, now the African Union, we have all these declarations and protocols. The Yamoussoukro Declaration on freeing the airspace, the Kigali Agreement on eliminating boundaries and having free movement of peoples. All these things are there. And what we need to do, therefore, is to implement. I said at another forum that Africa must now stop making any declaration, must now stop making anything, must now stop symposia and workshops and seminars, and go into a 5-year implementation of the declaration that we have made, so that when we meet, we simply meet for the purpose of assessing how far we have implemented. If we do that in 10 years, you'll be amazed what is happening. You'll be amazed at what can be achieved. It can be done. And I, in my mind, have a structure which I think would serve Africa well. Let us have a confederal government, a government that has a center whose only agenda is to ensure that we have one military. We need military strength. The law of the jungle still reigns in this world. The Americans say they are strong and bully us simply because they have a strong army. So we must have a single army. We must have a single currency. We must have coordinated foreign policy. We must have the things that make a state. Then the single units can now govern themselves. They can do policing and all those things. It can be done. This is a Swiss model which will be given a completely African flavor. And once we do that, and it is your generation that must work at it. I get annoyed when I get to borders in African countries and somebody asks me, how long are you going to be here? And I'm in Namibia. Why should I be asked? I should be in Namibia as long as I want, as long as I can demonstrate that I have the capacity to take care of myself. But this is colonial hangover, which we must get rid of for the sake of this continent. That is the only way we are going to compete with Europe. That is the only way we are going to compete with the Chinese. That is the only way we are going to compete with the Americans. That is the only way we are going to trade with them, from a position of strength, not from a position of weakness. And I'm happy that Africans are beginning to realize that this unity is critical going forward.